Good afternoon and welcome to the afternoon session of the Landmarks Preservation Commission's public hearing and public meeting of December 12th, 2023. We are resuming this afternoon with our public hearing item. We'll be starting with public hearing item number 4. The meeting is being held in person and also via Zoom and live stream on our YouTube channel if you'd like to watch the proceedings. And with that, I will turn it over to Corey Harala to take us through the items this afternoon.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Starting with public hearing item number 4, this is LPC 24-03020, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 616, lot 44, 302 West 13th Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District. This is a building built in 1892 and altered in 1953 by Julian K. Jastrzębski, and the application is to replace ground floor infill, modify and create masonry openings, raise parapets, install a cornice, and construct a rooftop addition.
Hi, my name is Fariba Makui. I'm a principal at Fisher Makui Architects. It's very nice to meet you all here. Our project is, how do I go to the slides?
Click on the screen and then you can use the mouse or the arrow.
Okay. Okay, very good. Oops. Okay, very good. So our project is located at 13th Street, right off of 8th Avenue. And there's a gas station right next door. The building is purchased by Bear, who's here right now, and then he's going to talk about it as well. He wants to make the building a single family. It's going to be their own residence. So he really cares about this. And he actually going to tell you, but he's living across the street. He has always been looking at this building. So it's nice that it's going to be restored. I can show you what the building is like. So this shows the map. Sorry. The map is showing where it's located. There's a historical map. Perfect. Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. And it's located in the West Village, right next to actually the Meat Market District, but it's in the Community District number 2. Takes a while for it to move. Okay. These are the historical tax maps of, where the building is. And it hasn't really changed in terms of the massing of the building. It's pretty much the same. Oops. So these are some, the building was built in 1892. And it went through renovation back in some of these pictures are from the historical tax maps that we found. The building went into renovation in 1950s, and they took out, some of the historical elements like the cornice, and they made the windows smaller, and it was changed to some kind of commercial use. And then in the 1980s, it was purchased by someone, and it was returned to 3-family residence. And then this picture is showing what it was in 1940. There was a cornice. The windows were longer than what they are now. The first floor was for commercial and was all glass. And they had 2 floors on 2 sides of the building. So this picture is showing what it is now and how we're going to hopefully bring it back to what it was. In the 1950s, they really, changed a lot of it. And this picture actually, if I can point, there's a pointer. Well, you know what? I will just explain. So the windows were, as you can see, they were longer. And then also I wanted to point out that the cornice and the parapet was above the third window the previous, of the next door building here. So this is the back of the building. It's showing actually you can see my cursor. Oh, good. Okay. So it's showing the bulkhead that is there already. This is a stair bulkhead. And at the back of the building, there are some windows which we're going to restore. And then the graffiti is gone now. The back of the building needs some scaffolding, so the graffiti is going to be gone also. And then this is another picture of the existing, showing the height of the next door building and our building. So this is what we are proposing. Because it's going to be a single family, they are going to keep the garage that is there right now. The windows will be mostly glass as it used to be. The sill of the window is already raised, and they want to keep that because for privacy, because it's going to be a residential building. And the entrance, the main entrance is going to remain as is. And we have another entrance for the secondary entrance for them on two sides. The purpose was to really restore the symmetrical look of the existing 1940 look. This is the back of the building. What we are suggesting is the two windows on the side of the building. The back is going to just restore the windows. The windows, I don't remember exactly when the windows were put in, but they're single pane, so we have to change them to double pane, and that's required by our energy anyway. And the bulkhead, what we are doing is extending the bulkhead and adding a room for them on the rooftop. That's the extension that we are showing. And then on top, we're going to have railings, for court purpose. And we are trying to make it very minimal. I'll show you the suggestion that we have for the railings in the end. So this is comparing what we are doing. We're bringing back the corners, as you can see, restoring it. And then the windows, as you can see on this picture, they were raised, but we're bringing it back to the original sill as it was. And then on the first floor, as I said, they have a garage already. We're extending it so it lines up with the window, so it has some relationship to the upper floors. And then the windows that they had here, which is more industrial, we are making them to go back to what it was in the 1940s. And the sill remains the way it is because of their privacy. And then this is showing the side. These are two windows that we are opening, and the addition on top, which is the extension of the bulkhead that was there before. This is just showing the side elevation of the bulkhead. It's going to be mostly glass with metal framing. So this is showing, exactly what you're doing with the bulkhead. The bulkhead, the way it was, now it's a little bit taller and extended. And then we have the railings on top of it. And windows are just going to be revised to look like what it was originally in 1940s. This is just showing with the markup that we did, which is the orange netting that you see in these pictures. They put up the netting, and then we took many pictures of showing, how it's going to be from the streets. And also, I just wanted to point out again that we're not going to be even matching the next door building that's higher than us. So the plot maps on the side is showing where the views are. This is our building, and the netting is over here. It's not as visible. And this is from the corner of the 13th Street and 8th Avenue. That's the netting. Some more pictures of the netting. And there's a park across the street, so that's why we took some pictures of that. And this is also showing from the other side of the building. And this is from the park. These are the photos from the park to show the netting that we are proposing the height. This is just further up. And actually, I want to show you most of the from the park. It's very hard to see it because of the trees. Some more pictures of different corners. Okay, so we did some studies of what is in the neighborhood and how they have put extension on the rooftop. And these are similar ideas of what we're going to be doing. These buildings, they have it slanted, but as we talked to landmark preservation before, we pushed the extension 5 feet away from the streets from the 8th Avenue and 13th Street. This is another addition that, you know, we just took the picture of, you know, how much higher up they're going, and, you know, they added some railings. These are in the neighborhood. Another example of, you know, which is very similar to what we are going to be doing. Obviously, this one is much bigger, but we just wanted to show that these are some of the things that are in the neighborhood. People are extending. So this is showing the corners that we're going to restore. We have to see how we are going to comply with the code. If we have to put railing, then we're going to put simple railing behind it to just meet code. The railing height, the parapet height may not be high enough, so we have to comply with code. And then this is showing what we are suggesting for the railing on the very top, which is very minimal, just you know, to comply with the code. And that's okay. And then the interior. So the interior is, as I said, it's going to be a single home, and the garage already is there. They just, you know, they're just keeping it. And then the first floor is going to be the kitchen and living room. I'm not sure if you guys are interested in the interior, but I'm just showing you what's going to happen. But the stairs is pretty much staying in the same location. The shape of it has changed, but the stairs stand. These are the upper floors, the second floor, and the window that we were showing you on the side is going to be right here on the side of the elevator that they have. And the elevator, we made sure the bulk, it doesn't go above the bulkhead that we have. This is the extension that we are proposing on the rooftop. As I said, it's 5 feet away from both streets, and you know, it's just a room, and they want to have the possibility of opening these windows, so it's kind of indoor, outdoor space for them. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. Questions, commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Ginsburg.
So I have two questions. One is, there's painted signage on the existing facade between, I guess, the second and third floor.
Right.
Could that be kept?
Actually, yeah, it was added. I'm not sure 1980s. Actually, you know what? Before we go, can I just please
Yes.
introduce the owner here? He just wants to say a little more.
My name is Barry Lipsitz. I purchased the building about 6 months ago. I've been living on this street for about 15 years. And I've actually lived across from this building for a long time, and I'm very familiar with it. I'm going to be moving in with my wife and my children. So I'm really trying to, this is not a flip for me. It's my actual, you know, home, forever home. the ghost sign that was there, we don't really understand the context of it because it wasn't in the historical photos anywhere where I could find that sign when the metal came down. I don't even know what's behind the other ones. I guess the middle panel fell down at some point. But I'm not really too sure.
So, but it's not in the historic
It's not in
photograph?
the historic photos. So I don't know if that was added, you know, it was they changed the facade, I believe, in 1956 to the Shevchenko Scientific Society. And then in the 80s, artist Judith Godwin bought the building and she converted it a little more on the ground level. So we really don't know too much about the history with those ghost signs.
All right. And just from a kind of regulatory perspective, I think the commission has not required that people keep ghost signs. We have allowed new signs over ghost signs. But we have certainly approved for keeping them and restoring them and maintaining them, but it's not something we have typically required. Particularly if there's a new building owner who has a different name and we can't compel someone to keep a name that's not theirs. That's part of the reason.
And then I have a second question, which is, I understand the existing stair is basically where you're putting the new stair, but that makes the penthouse very visible. Did you look at trying to move the penthouse back so it's adjacent to the taller building behind it and less visible?
Right, we actually have, and what the good thing about this for them, because they're using it, is that they have the views of the park when they're in the room. I'm going to go back to the plan of it actually. Oops. Okay. So this is going to be like a sitting area, living room for them. And then we have the views of the park, which is right across the street. And then in the back, they have a bathtub, which is below, it's like a hot tub below the parapet. So the reason we didn't want to look into pushing it further back is that, first of all, the stair is here. And then we're going to have to extend the stair to bring it back to put the living room in the back. And then the hot tub is going to be so visible from the corner. So we wanted to push it further back so it's not so visible. Those were the reasons.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? All right, not seeing any questions. We'll move to testimony. We might have more after that. And we have one person who's signed up to speak, Jeremy Woodruff.
Good afternoon, Jeremy Woodruff speaking for the Victorian Society in New York. We confess a certain affection for the 1953 alterations. The corrugated metal spandrels and steel hopper windows lend a certain authentic mid-century grit reflective of a period in the history of the village that is quickly being lost and forgotten. Nonetheless, given the building's current condition, we think a return to an appearance closer to its original design is appropriate. However, some details must be fixed. First, the dimensional and proportional relationship of the cornice to the brick wall above the third floor is wrong. There's too much brick and too little cornice. The tax photo shows what must be done to correct this. Second, the first floor front facade is unresolved. We understand that the building's use as a residence precludes fully transparent storefront windows, but there are various ways to achieve opacity at the lower portion. Traditional storefront windows can be installed with interior shutters, shades, or window film. The option of a high exterior sill and bulkhead could work, but it would need to be more robustly detailed to be harmonious with the floors above. The completely flat metal panels and lack of stronger vertical and horizontal divisions are the most problematic features of the proposed first floor design. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll note that there is no one else in the hearing room to speak, so I'll turn it over to Gregory to take us through any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. If you are in the meeting and would like to speak on this item, please click the raise hand button now. Being a task winter, I do have you signed up. So if you would like to speak on behalf of Village Preservation and you're with us, please raise your hand. Okay, it doesn't seem as though she's by her computer. So I will note for the record that the Community Board 2 recommends approval of the facade restoration apart from the ghost sign and approval of the lengthening of the windows to their original height, the addition of the historic cornice, denial of the removal of the ghost sign as an important reference to the era of painted wall signs and identification of the building's commercial past, and denial of the penthouse is far more than the standard English range as not more than minimally visible for the rooftop addition and any of the rooftop structure that is than a modest enlargement of the existing stair bulkhead. And I will also know that we did receive a letter from Village Preservation on this item. And I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
All right, thank you. So I'd like to ask if you'd like to respond to the comments we've heard.
Yeah, go back to the facade. So actually, the ghost sign, I'm not really sure what it says. Actually, I think Barry knows, but are you guys open to restoring it?
Awesome.
I think, yeah, that could be done. I guess, everybody agrees that the windows are just going to the original sill, so that would be okay. And the addition, we are lower than the next door building. As I said, the next door building is actually much higher than what we are showing the building to be. And then, if we have to push it back, we can push it back, but this is our preferred option.
Okay. All right, and commissioners, any final questions?
You may have one more person.
Okay.
Yes, I think we may be having some technical difficulties with the raise hand function. We did receive emails that we have Village Preservation and HTC would like to comment on this. So first, I will be promoting Dina Tasswinter from Village Preservation to speak on this item. Good. So I've promoted you to panelist, Dina Tasswinter. If you could please unmute your line and say it for the record, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Great. Thank you so much. And apologies for the tech issues. My name is Dina Tasswinter, and I'm speaking on behalf of Village Preservation. Village Preservation is concerned about the cumulative effect of the proposed alterations for this building. The transformation that occurred at the building in the 1950s reflects its position as a transitional structure on the border of Greenwich Village and the Meatpacking District. To attempt to revert it to its historic appearance per the 1940s tax photograph would be to lose its industrial and commercial history. While some changes may be appropriate here, such as restoring the original window heights, as long as careful attention is paid to the window details, the overall result of the proposal seems to be a Disney-fied or faux historic appearance. In this special case, we especially feel that every effort should be made to retain the ghost sign at the primary facade. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you so much for the testimony. And next up, we will be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. So Lucy Levine, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC finds this proposal to be generally appropriate. We believe, however, that the applicant should work with staff to refine the design of the storefront. In particular, the current column spacing and window bulkheads of the proposed storefront system do not seem to relate to the rhythm of the upper stories in a sufficiently articulate way. Additionally, the design of the cornice is in need of further refinement. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Okay, so if there's anything else you'd like to add, please feel free.
The only thing I want to add is that the cornice is, we looked at the historical pictures and we tried to mimic the cornice as close as possible to original cornice that we had. We can simplify it maybe if that's, what.
So I do you have the historic photo there?
Yes.
Because we did hear testimony about the proportional relationship of the brick to the cornice, and that may have to do with a sort of missing scale,
Correct.
sort of really getting the scale of the cornice right. So,
Right, that's why I was pointing out that the existing cornice was actually under the other building's window. So it's pretty much restoring it to where it was.
so I think there's a fascia beneath it, right, that goes closer to the windows. And I think that's what is maybe the area that's underdeveloped.
Mhm.
It's an easy fix.
I understand.
Okay, yes, Commissioner Jefferson.
One quick question. In the 50s, was it a single family house?
I believe in the 50s was.
In the 50s, it turned into a Ukrainian cultural center. So I don't think it was residential at all.
Okay. All right, any other final questions? All right, let's make a motion to close the hearing and begin our discussion. Commissioner Chen, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
So second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing's closed and we'll begin our discussion. And this is a proposal that is largely to restore this building to its historic appearance. And that includes installing a cornice, lengthening the windows, and installing storefront infill at the ground floor that is evocative of storefronts, and a rooftop addition. And the applicant did present examples of studio windows, and I think also examples of other buildings along 7th and 8th Avenue that are on sort of uniquely shaped lots where the commission has approved additions over time. And so while sometimes we do find additions that are visible and even more than minimally visible to be appropriate, we'll have a discussion about placement, height, design, and its relationship to the building on which it's sitting. So, so we have the base, the sort of facade with the cornice, and the rooftop addition. Commissioner Lutfi, would you like to start this one?
Never exactly person, but I have to say that I'm completely okay with not restoring that facade, because although it might relate to to what was going on. Oh, shoot, sorry.
Do I have to start all over? No, thank you. Because although it might be a reflection of the times, and certainly the use is, I don't think it contributed to the landscape in any meaningful way. And actually, I would like to applaud the applicant for taking this, as part of making a home for his family, to try to, restore and adapt this building, and, looking at what was there and making modest changes so that character is brought back to life. I think it actually will overall be a lovely addition to the streetscape. So I think there are a few things that I just wanted to bring up, and I'm sorry, but the primary one is the rooftop addition, because it is so highly visible. And as part of that, so is that railing. So I feel like, I know it may screw up your floor plan, but I feel like you've got to figure out a way. It's not a common thing that we see right here in the village. And I feel like you really need to figure out how to make that less visible in those two areas. And you probably, just based on the comments that we have had, I think you probably need to work with staff on the cornice, because when you look at the prior photo, it does have a little more heft, and I think you've lost an important distinguishing character of the building at the top and ultimately on the facade. So I'm not having a problem with anything on the bottom. I really think you've streamlined everything and you've lined it up with things above it in a way that doesn't compete, and it's got a presence, and but it's understated. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Vice Chair Bland?
Well, context is everything, and I'm so happy we're not related to that context. The gas station. But I think that points out to me the interesting situation that the site exhibits. And for me, that makes it a little freer. We're not in a precious West Village streetscape block. We're on a wild and woolly, and there's lots of stuff happening along the way. So I can take a pretty true view of this. I also applied the approach as opposed to the 50s approach. This seems to me to be right and quite elegant. This view makes those rooms up on top almost invisible, but another view makes them not so invisible. But it's cable that you're suggesting, which I think is the right thing to do. And I think the rendering that showed it would show it more prominently actually than it would be. So long-windedly, I'll say I think I support it as is.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, just following on Vice Chair's comment. This is I like the approach in the front. I think the difficulty is clearly on the top. And that's been asked before. I think because of the configuration of that the penthouse, and then the configuration of that sunken tub. I like to see the rest of the commissioners to see how they feel about whether there's anything that can be done up there.
Okay, Commissioner Ginsburg.
Well, there's always an issue with preservation. What do you preserve to? I sort of like the 1950s renovation, but I realize that to go back to the more original, the corners can be worked with stone. I think they really need to look at moving the rooftop addition back. So it will still be visible, but it will be less visible. And in front of that behind it. So I think they should try to study that. At the corners, they can work with staff on.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Goldblum.
Thank you. I think that I agree with everyone's comments so far with Mark's anyway, about the rooftop needing to be less visible. I think that one simple solution would be to take the AC unit off the roof of that element, and then you don't have to have a railing on it if it doesn't have anything on it. And moving it back would certainly make it less visible and also better for the context. I think if it is going to remain significantly visible, then I think that the reading of it as a north light or an artist's skylight it is typically associated with a slightly sloped surface and a tighter mullion spacing, and I think that would make this an more appropriate visible addition. We've seen a bunch of those over the years. I think that the other, I agree with the comments on the cornice. Staff can certainly handle that. Take a look at the brackets. These have very emphatic brackets in the picture. I couldn't see them as extending the full height of the frieze. So I think if you're going for a restorative approach, then you can work with staff on that. I do think that the ground floor needs a little bit of attention. And again, that can be done with staff. There's a bunch of projects where we've done exactly this. Two of them on McDougal Street, really close by to here, I think, that bear examination. But I think in general, it's an appropriate thing. The last thing I would say is that while I don't think I would mandate it as a requirement, retaining that ghost sign on the front facade will make this a better project, and you will really, really be happy that you did.
Make it more unique.
Yeah.
So just to close out the ground floor, working with staff on the proportions as well as the framing details.
It can be as it is with a mix of glass but he's got a roll-up industrial gate there. I think we can do better, especially since it's what the public experiences most closely. And I think panels, high water table, frosted glass. There's lots of different ways you can do it. I mean, the ones on McDougal Street stick in my mind because I've been on that block a bunch, but I'm sure there are other ones around that the staff can help them with.
Okay, great. Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah.
I think in general, it's a very good proposal. And it's, a huge improvement over the current situations. I think the only thing would be to have the staff work with the applicant on seeing if they, can reduce the visibility of the addition on the top a little bit, but I can definitely approve it and just have the staff see if there's some ways they can suggest that don't ruin their program, but allow them to have it be a little less visible. It's still going to be visible. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Jefferson.
This solution is a vast design improvement over the existing 1950s, no doubt. I do think that where am I?
Got it. Okay, I got it.
The cornice should be restudied because right now in this image, it looks like the space between the eyes and the eyebrow and the hair is too much. That's a wrong way of putting it, but there's too much space between the head of the window and the cornice, and that could be reduced. And I think the ground level should be, this is a kind of an odd shaped building. It's kind of muscular, and the ground floor should have a little bit more muscle to it, a little bit more stuff, more, not just flat, modern, clean. It should be more robust, if the right word.
Okay, Commissioner Master.
I agree with a lot of the other commissioners. I think that everything can probably be done at staff level, whether it's reducing the visibility of the addition, the cornice, and if there's some tweaking that needs to be done on the ground floor level.
Okay, great. So I think we can move to approve this with the condition that you. Oh, and I'm so sorry. And I have you right in front of me. I was making sure I. Sorry, Anne, go ahead.
It's okay. Well, I know this building really well. I live very nearby, so I know it well. I really actually have to say that I miss all of the street art that's been painted over. It's been really great over the years to watch that develop and change, and so I'm sad to see that go. So I hope that the applicant will keep the ghost sign as at least a remnant of that history of the past of the building. I think that, you know, this approach is fine to bring it back to a more historic representation of what was there before. Although I do also have quite a bit of a fondness for the 1950s interpretation. I can see that, you know, you'd want to have it a little more homey looking as a residence. So I agree with a lot of the comments already been said about the cornice. Definitely needs to be looked at portion, and the ground floor. I think the approach is fine, but I do think that the details need to be worked out, and I think that could be done with staff. And I think that the rooftop addition ideally would be up against the taller building. And I know that probably be difficult with the plan, but to get it further away from the corner and lower would be preferable. And to eliminate that rail on top, as Michael Goldblum said, would be a very big improvement.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, so I think all of those comments are consistent with the other comments we've heard around the table. So I think we can do a motion to approve it with the modifications that they work with the staff to refine the details and articulation at the ground floor to provide a deeper level of articulation, to refine and finesse the details at the cornice to get the right proportions and details, and then to look at making the rooftop addition less prominent. And we know that it would, on this uniquely shaped building, that it will still have some visibility, but the applicant should look at shifting it toward the taller building, perhaps sloping it, perhaps studying the railing as well. And so, Commissioner Lutfi, are you comfortable with that? Okay, great.
I have one more question.
Okay, we encouraging them to do those things.
I think that many people have suggested that it would be nice to keep it, and the applicant has seemed open to it. So,
oops.
Okay.
When you were not doing this, historic, you can help people to keep historic or not.
I would hear it.
So it really is more of a voluntary thing to make the project better.
Okay, so in the matter of docket 24-0302-302 West 13th Street, Greenwich Village Historic District, a building built in 1892 and altered in 1953 by Julian K. Jastrensky. The application is to replace ground floor infill, modify and create masonry openings, raise parapets, install a cornice, and construct a rooftop addition. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Greenwich Village Historic District. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the 1950s alterations are not unique or representative of exceptional details or craftsmanship. Therefore, the work will not eliminate a significant later alteration. That the removal of the corrugated metal panels, installation of cornices, restoration of the front facade, window openings, and installation of back finished 2/2 windows will help return the building closer to its historic appearance. That the raising of the parapet at the front facade is based on historic photographic evidence and is restorative in nature. That the creation of larger masonry openings for the garage and entry doors will help to facilitate the adaptive reuse of this building from commercial to residential. That the base of the building has been highly altered over time, and that the modern cornice and new windows with metal cladding beneath them will be in keeping with the history of changes at this location. And that the new window openings at the cornice facade will not disrupt design facade and will be of a regular size and pattern, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the Greenwich Village Historic District. However, I find that the placement and visibility of the roof addition near the front corner of the building calls undue attention to itself, and that the details of the cornice do not closely match the historic condition. I therefore recommend that the massing of the rooftop addition be shifted away from the corner and toward the taller adjacent building to reduce visibility, and with it that the railings at the rooftop addition be minimized or eliminated to further reduce visibility, and that the applicant work with staff to explore all of this, including possibly creating a slanted addition, more like an artist's skylight. And also that the details of the cornice be refined in consultation with staff, and that on the ground floor, that the applicant works with staff on refining the details and proportions and articulation of the ground floor. And finally, that the applicant consider retaining the ghost sign.
Right. Commissioner Master, would you second that motion?
Second.
Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
With 10 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
Thank you very much.
We'll now move
Next
to
item.
public hearing item number 5, LPC 24-02603. This is an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1197, lot 20, 7 West 83rd Street in the Upper West Side, Central Park West Historic District. A neo-Romanesque Byzantine style synagogue complex designed by Charles Bradford Myers and built in 1928 to 1930. The application is to install fencing and awnings at the roof.
Hi, so I am Sarah Grant, and I'm here today with Kate Brown from MBB Architects. And we will walk you briefly through this. So this is an application for 7 West 83rd Street, Congregation Road of Shalom on the Upper West Side within the historic district. What you're seeing here is that the building was originally built between 1928 and 1930. And then during the early 1950s, there was a rooftop addition that was completed along with classroom space. At that time, the terrace was legalized as an outdoor play space. And we're talking about at this level here. And what you're seeing is that by the time the 1990s designation report was written, there was actually a rooftop fence that was in place at this location. And so what's currently in place today is that existing legal play space, as well as a more recent rooftop addition from 2003. And our current work includes renovations to this play space and a new code required fence for that play space. Okay.
So this shows the area of work for the renovation. As you can see, it's on the southern part of the building, and the terrace fronts on 83rd Street, and it's on the 6th floor. These are some views of the terrace from Central Park West, so from the corner of 83rd Street and Central Park West. And you can see that from that vantage point, the fence is visible from the street. This is a view from Central Park. There's a rock outcropping along the edge of the park. And so you can see from this view that the fence is visible, but the eastern side of the terrace is the only part of the terrace that's visible from this view. The western side is obscured by the other buildings. And this view shows the visibility of the fence from directly across the street on 83rd Street. And then this view is further down towards Columbus Avenue. You can see in the photo on the left, highlighted in red, is a section of the existing fence that we are proposing to remove and not replace at the kind of most visible corner. This is a plan showing the existing condition. So you can see that in the existing condition, the play structure is sort of along the 83rd Street side of the parapet, and the existing chain link fence runs from the west to about the middle of the parapet. In the photos, you saw that this parapet has a high peak in the middle, and so the fence is interrupted by that peak. And there's also a small section of wooden fence that kind of closes the gap to that triangle. And this is the proposed plan. So as you can see on the plan, we are proposing to remove the existing fence on the westernmost corner, and instead it'll turn back at the stair bulkhead. We're also proposing to remove that wooden part of the fence, so the entire fence will be a stainless steel web net. And we are also proposing a new retractable awning. One of the awning posts is minimally visible from the 83rd Street, from directly across the building at 83rd Street. But all of the rest of the renovation is not visible from the street. So the play structure is all set back and is low enough, so it's not visible. These are the existing elevations of the building, which show just the area of work. And these are enlarged existing and proposed elevations. So at the top is the existing elevation, and you can see that the existing chain link fence varies in height from about 11 feet to almost 13 feet. And the proposed new fence will be the DOH required minimum, which is 10 feet with a 1 foot 45-degree inward facing piece. And these are the east and west elevations, which show similarly, rather than having a fence that varies from 11 to 13 feet, we're bringing it all down and removing that corner on the western side. This diagram just shows the view sections that we're going to go. So we have 3 sections cut perpendicular to the terrace, and then 2 oblique sections to show the visibility. This first section is taken directly across from the building on 83rd Street. And so you can see that the proposed new fence at this location is pretty much comparable to the height of the existing fence, but it will be set back further from the street. The existing fence is mounted directly to the top of the coping. This next section is cut through the fence and also the proposed awning. So you can see in this section that the awning itself is not visible from the street, but one of the 4 vertical posts is the top 18 inches of it is visible from the street. So it's counts as minimally visible. And you can see here as well that the proposed new fence is quite a bit lower than the existing fence. And then these are the 2 oblique view sections, which show that from Central Park and from down west to Columbus Avenue, the awning is not visible, and the fence is still visible from the street. These just show the existing and proposed details for the fence. So the existing details are on the left. The existing fence is a sort of typical chain link fence, so it has pretty large posts and then horizontal crossbars and vertical bars as well. And it's mounted to centered on the top of the coping stone at the parapet. The new fence will be mounted to the inside face of the parapet wall, so it's further from the street And it also is, the vertical post will be 2x3 rather than the almost 3-inch diameter posts. And the web net infill is more of a minimal material than the existing chain link. This just shows the material for the fence fabric, which is this web net, which will be 50 millimeter diameter openings. And these are some precedents in the neighborhood for other school buildings or synagogues that have rooftop fences. So the Stephen Wise Free Synagogue is pretty nearby, and it has a very similar condition where it has this kind of rooftop play fence visible from the primary facade. And the Calhoun School as well has a similar condition. And this is just another precedent at St. Hilda's and St. Hugh's School where you can see the rooftop play fence. And this is a slide showing some details about the awning. And so the awning post would be a powder coated gray, and the awning fabric would be a gray color. And this is just some precedent photos of this awning installed in other locations.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Seems very straightforward. All right. And I'll note that there is no one in the hearing room to testify, so I will turn it over to Gregory to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. First, we will be hearing from Kay Carpin from Manhattan Community Board 7. Kay Carpin, I am promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. We'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, commissioners. I'll be brief. At Community Board 7, we are in strong support of the proposed alterations as being appropriate to the character of the historic district. We recognize that Road of Shalom has been around a long time. It's a beautiful building, and the synagogue's an important contributor to the neighborhood. We will not miss the chain link fence one little bit, and we feel that the proposed fence will be smaller, shorter, and more attractive and less visible. In short, what's not to love? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. And next up, we will be hearing from Megan Fitzpatrick from Landmark West. Megan Fitzpatrick, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. Megan Fitzpatrick speaking on behalf of Landmark West. The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee believes that removing the existing chain link fencing, a portion of the fenced area, and the sandbox on the roof above the parapet will contribute to a lighter on the skyline overall. New fencing material is less visually and structurally bulky and therefore less distracting than the existing chain link fence. We recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any further hands raised, so I will bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Great. Thank you very much. So the testimony was supported. Are there any other final comments you'd like to make before we move to our discussion? Okay, thanks. And commissioners, if there are no final questions, we'll make a motion to close the hearing. Commissioner Leffrey, would you make the motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Vice Chair Brown, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. And this is to replace an existing 2-tiered chain link fence with a fence that is lower in some parts, single height, and simplified and actually reduced in length on the west side. And the applicants have also included very minimal visibility of a post that would support a proposed awning. So Commissioner Chapin, would you like to start this one?
Yeah, sure. I think that, you know, it's necessarily required by code and in various ways. And it is I think it's going to be somewhat less visible than it currently is. So I think that these adjustments are very appropriate and I can approve it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jefferson?
I find this appropriate. It was always visible and now it's less visible. 30% less visible. It's better than what it was.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Master?
Appropriate.
And Commissioner Lutfi?
Appropriate.
Vice Chair Bland?
Yes, I agree.
All right, and just in the interest of time, does anyone disagree or have a different comment? Okay, so I think.
I'll just add that we're going to see more and more enemies with climate change and issues that is something we need to be supportive of.
Okay, great. Thank you for adding that. All right, Commissioner Chapin, would you make the motion?
Sure. In the matter of a certificate of appropriateness for
Sorry. Go ahead. But I also didn't go around the table, so it's okay.
I just say anybody else said that.
Didn't say that.
Yes, you did. Is everything okay? Right. Okay. Certificate of appropriateness for LPC 24-02603, 7 West 83rd Street, Upper West Side, Central Park West Historic District, and the Romanesque Byzantine style synagogue complex designed by Charles Bradford Myers and built in 1928 to 1930. Application is to install fencing and awnings at the roof. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Upper West Side Central Park West Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features. That the proposed fence will be set back from the front facade and will be smaller in length and height and less visible than the existing fence. That the visibility of the fencing from directly across the street from Central Park West and from West 83rd Street towards Columbus Avenue is in keeping with other safety fencing on top of educational and religious buildings in the district. That the web net fencing will be highly transparent and less visible than conventional chain link fencing. That the proposed retractable awning and its structure will be only minimally visible over the front facade from directly across the street and from West 83rd Street towards Columbus Avenue and will not be visible from Central Park West. And that the work will not detract from the special architectural or historic character of the building or the Upper West Side Central Park West Historic District.
Commissioner Goldblum, would you second that motion?
Second.
Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg, Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
With 10 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
That's approved. Thank you.
We'll now move on to the next items, and it is 2 items being presented together. I'm going to read them in both now. Both pertain to 854 Fifth Avenue, the R. Livingston and Eleanor T. Beekman House, former permanent mission of Yugoslavia to the UN, individual landmark, also in the Upper East Side Historic District in the borough of Manhattan, block 1381, lot 72. The first is item 6, LPC 24-02994, an application for a certificate of appropriateness. And again, this building is a French Beaux-Arts style house designed by Warner Wetmore and built in 1903 to 05. This first application is to modify the stoop and install a barrier-free access lift, modify the areaway, install ironwork, replace a door, remove special windows, and close a courtyard and construct and modify bulkheads. The second application is item 7, LPC 24-02995. This is an application for a modification of use in bulk. It's an application request that the LPC issue a report to the City Planning Commission relating to an application for a modification of use in bulk pursuant to section 74-711 of the zoning resolution.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Valerie Campbell. I'm a partner at Kramer Levin, and we're land use counsel to the owner of 854 Fifth Avenue. an individual landmark that is located on Fifth Avenue between 66th and 67th Streets in the Upper East Side Historic District. I am joined this afternoon by Peter Prenoyer, Jennifer Garrick Harris, Louis Gleason, and Tom LaMontagne from Peter Prenoyer Architects. Sean Rubenheimer and Alice Lane, the owner's representatives from Grafton Limited in London, are also present via Zoom. We have two applications today. The first is an application for a certificate of appropriateness for certain alterations to the building, including alterations to the areaway and front door, the extension of stair and elevator bulkheads, and the infill of an existing interior court to create a new room. These alterations are part of a comprehensive restoration and repair program for the landmark, which is seriously deteriorated after many years of neglect and a devastating fire in 2018. And the second application is a request to the Landmarks Preservation Commission to issue a report to the City Planning Commission pursuant to 74-711 of the zoning resolution. As you know, the section 74-711 special permit is available to landmarks to waive certain use and bulk provisions in exchange for the owner's commitment to restore and maintain the landmark to a sound first-class condition in perpetuity. In this case, the proposed adaptive reuse of the building as a private members club requires the special permit because a members club is now considered to be a use group 6 commercial use, and the building is located in a residential district. The members club will also include 3 guest rooms, which are classified as use group 5 because the intent is to allow for transient occupancy. We will also need the section 74-711 special permit to waive rear yard regulations with respect to the extension of the bulkhead and for a waiver of the minimum 20-foot distance to a lot line required for legal windows and for the inner court dimensions. It is important to note that the members club is not a nightclub or a high occupancy use and will not be a rental event space. There are many private members clubs in the Upper East Side Historic District, such as the Metropolitan Club, the Lotus Club, and the Leash Club. The application includes a detailed existing conditions report as well as a draft restrictive declaration that memorializes a continuing maintenance plan for the landmark. Peter will describe the building's history, the existing conditions, and the proposed work. I am happy to answer any questions the commission has about the special permit request at the end of Peter's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. It's an especial privilege for my firm to be able to restore and bring back to life this extraordinary mansion designed by Whitney Warren and completed in 1906. This is a picture taken during a brief window when the scaffolding was down. As Valerie mentioned, there was a fire, there's extensive damage to the facade, and also many modifications over the decades, none of which appear to have been passed by this commission. Our historical research has uncovered many clues and evidence of the parts that were missing. In this view, an original door, which is a decorative iron door, and the original window configurations. We also see that on the balcony on the top of the dormer setback, but those windows had an iron guilloche pattern grille set in the wall. Other views give us evidence of the state of the building, including the fact that for 10 years on the south, there was a vacant lot which exposed many of the surfaces to the weather for a long time before the Candela building was built. The facade, I won't go into great detail about the restoration, just to say that in every case where original fabric can be restored, it is being restored. However, at the upper level above the 3rd floor, the stone is completely degraded and unstable, and parts of the cornice continue to fall off onto our scaffolding. That will entail replacement. The areaway and the stoop itself have displacement, stones that have been moving, cracking, and areas of the parts that are simply missing, like the gate to the areaway. The areaway was extensively modified by the Yugoslavian government. And in total, there's also the issue of ADA accessibility to the building, which we are addressing in our design. On the lower right, you note that the step that brings you to the first landing is actually in the plane of the outer edge of this areaway, which is exceptionally deep. Our plans restore the sidewalk for 3 foot 10 inches going back towards the building. More detail on the issues with the building. Some very strange things going on with windows, which I didn't even get into, other than they apply plastic sheeting after one of the bombings that they were subjected to over the decades. The upper stories obviously have much more serious degradation. On the lower right, you see that the Yugoslavian government decided to simply remove a section of the railing and do other things that are obviously not original to the building. An extraordinary feature of this building is the fact that it was originally built full. In fact, it touches its neighbor to the east, which is currently controlled by the Japanese government. But these features on the back are very elaborate. It was the tallest block on the building, and Whitney Warren seemed to really go almost overboard. On the lower right is the double height loggia that was Emily Thorne White bedroom, was the master bedroom. And on the left, you see this extraordinary window with slanted copper spandrels and other features. So the back of the building deserves a lot of attention, and it has a lot of issues. This is also a place where you will see one of the bulkheads we're proposing. I won't get into the other sidewalls and blank walls, but those also need extensive attention. The roof likewise needs to be resurfaced and new railings, etc. That there is a light court in the middle of the building that descends down to the 3rd floor. Our proposal is to enclose this as a room and install a new skylight of the same design that is lower than the parapet. And so this is not visible from the public way in any place, but this is one aspect of our design that will increase the square footage of the building marginally. Other walls in that light court. I'll skip over these details. They're hard to read at this scale anyway. And I'll get right to the axonometric, I think, is most telling. On the lower left, you see our proposed, the existing stoop areaway. And to the right, you'll see that we're adding railings and widening those steps. I'll describe that further later. But this view shows you most clearly our expansion of the 2 existing bulkheads on the building. One at the center of the building, one at the center of the building, which we're extending 12 feet in order to accommodate the minimum required fire stair, which is right here, will be there. The other area, the other expansion of the bulkhead is this portion of the rear bulkhead, which we plan to clad in a treatment which will make it appear to be part of the original fabric of the building. You can also see at the center of the image on the right, the new skylight that is proposed to be based on the original below. On the left, the facade after repairs and cleaning, but before new elements. And on the right, you see that we have a new proposed ornamental iron door, new guilloche pattern railings at the dormer level, and modifications to the areaway. This is an important view. We're on 66th Street, looking between 1 East 66th Street and an adjacent rental building, also from the late 1930s. And we see at the top of our structure, 854, a new copper cladding, which will be the expansion of our bulkhead. So you see it right up there. We intend to use existing molding profiles from other places on the facade, similar materials, and match the window profiles to create this treatment of the bulkhead. We think the architecture on the back of the building is extraordinary and deserves to be respected. This is a view that the public will not have. We're now standing in the courtyard, the property 1 East 66th Street. But you can see our bulkhead more clearly here. And also you can see the restoration of the service stair, which, by the way, internally is only 39 inches wide. It's the most treacherous stair we've ever seen. And the architect appears to have seen something in Paris that appealed to him. We are now on 67th Street. On the right is J.E.R. Carpenter's 2 East 67th. On the left, Duncan's Japanese Mission. And you can see that our expansion is barely visible. I'll get into more detail on the areaway, just to say that we are widening the steps, but we're pulling the first step in 3 feet 10 inches from the sidewalk line. Our intention is to provide accessibility for people using wheelchairs that is identical to accessibility for others. On the upper left, you see the set of steps that in the northern part of the steps recesses mechanically into the body of the building. They nest under the landing, the top landing. This reveals a lift, which then lifts up to the landing. So unassisted, in other words, not requiring an attendant, a person using a wheelchair will be able to approach the actuator pad, press it, and be brought up to the same landing as other visitors without having to expose an ugly piece of equipment. If you're interested, the presentation includes a link to a video of this. They've been very successful in London. There's one in Seattle also. These are details of the areaway. I'll get to the addition of a bronze painted railing on top of the cheek walls. So here we have the cheek walls. You see that the sidewalk has been pulled in, and our new landing at the top is ample and allows a coplanar path for ADA access into the building. On top of the sidewalls, we need to add a railing to bring it into compliance with code. The precedent for these railings are many, and these are just a few in the neighborhood where the lower walls flanking areaway steps were capped with ironwork. We have examples by Warren and Wetmore and Grosvenor Atterbury. Then there are many others. The doors are non-original. They are solid, and we are proposing to replace them with doors which are ornamental and have details which we have gathered from other places in this building, as well as other structures designed by Whitney Warren. These are some of the details of that. The precedent for these doors are many, and these are some just within this neighborhood. Adams and Warren have one. Harry Allen Jacobs, of course, use this kind of door, and there are many examples. So we're not inventing something out of whole cloth, but it does incorporate themes which appear in Whitney Warren's work. These are the guilloche railings that I described. For security, the Yugoslavians did many strange things, including pulling off railings and replacing them with these bars of metal. And so on 2 floors, on the first floor and the second floor rear, we were replacing them with the same guilloche pattern, which matches the original on the front dormer level of the Fifth Avenue facade. There's another example of it. This loggia had a beautiful stone baluster, which connected with a railing into the plinth of the columns. And we fortunately found that a piece of this railing had been set on concrete blocks as a kind of bench, and an original baluster had fallen off and was found at the bottom of the air shaft. So we have documentation for what we're doing. However, we need to add a railing on top of it. This will be painted bronze. And again, I refer you to the precedent. We are proposing to reposition windows on this facade. The brickwork needs completely to be redone. And the new windows will have the same jack arch detailing and matching brick as the original. This is at the cellar level. We're proposing to add a slab to expand into a room that will raise the court into the cellar level. This is not visible from any neighbor and certainly not from the public way. The lattice fence above complies with the 6 feet rule. Details of that expanded bulkhead hopper architecture with 3 windows. More of the sidewalls. The courtyard itself will be treated with pure stuck or something like constone, which you see in Grand Central Terminal, and also in the Vanderbilt apartment that Warren designed within the Mott Schmidt building at 655 Park Avenue. It's bringing this room into more consistent architecture with the facade and the public rooms. Right now, it's sort of the back of the space feeling. That perspective at the center is created by a trellis on a blind panel. We are also proposing to introduce new openings in this. The DOB requires us to have this very open to the adjacent rooms in order to comply with the egress requirements. The balconies on the floor above are formed with cast iron balusters that we will salvage from an existing non-complying stair at the center of the building. So we're going to collect all those, and we're about 8 short. We'll have them cast to match. And this is the north side. So you see this space has to be very open on the 3rd floor level in order to comply with building department code. These are before and after. The before are obviously photographs, the after are digital renderings to give you a sense of the architecture. Sight lines. Well, first of all, I note that in this project, we have a great project in front of us, which is to restore all the public rooms, which you see are the rooms that are drawn. This is unusual. Many private clients would want all of this French architecture removed. It's all being replaced, including a room on the entrance level that appears to have been salvaged by Mrs. White from her father, Mr. Vanderbilt's house on 52nd Street. The sight lines show that in the existing, you do see the back bulkhead. So that wall does appear. The upper line is from a point 575 feet into Central Park. Nothing is visible from the sidewalk on the other side of 5th Avenue. This is the after picture, and you do see that the bulkhead does appear that a little bit more from the point within the park. These are the points, the various points we tested, which I'll go through. From the sidewalk, you see that there is no visibility. When we step into the park, across the street, there is no visibility. When we're deep in the park, you get some visibility with the telephoto lens. And finally, there is one little hill, which seems to be very popular. We can never seem to get access to it without someone sitting there, but there it is. There's the view on the right, and it's minimally visible from that one spot, which is elevated. This is from 67th Street. On the right, you see that portion of the bulkhead, which will be visible. And from 66th Street, you see the orange portion that will be clad in copper in our scheme. And I think that is, I'll just go to the final slide. These are some of the rooms, historic rooms, which I thought was the subject today. This is a rendering of the final design between its 2 neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Do we have questions, commissioners? Commissioner Goldblum.
Yeah, just for our council, what is our general jurisdiction on the interior? The exterior, non-visible, significant windows. Just give us a little sense of what our job is with those. of which on this job there are plenty.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they are exterior significant windows, and so any changes would need to be found appropriate to them. In this case, because it is a special permit, any repairs or changes would have to be to a sound first-class condition.
So does that include, in your view, the inner court?
Yes, the inner court is an exterior space. It would be like looking at a bay window on the rear facade of a house.
I just want to get that out there. Thanks.
Yeah, so we certainly regulate it and we should have a discussion about it. So that's part of our jurisdiction. Okay, other questions? Okay, so no other questions. Let's see if we have any public testimony. Is there anyone in this room who would like to speak on this item? All right, noting that there isn't, I'll turn it to Gregory College to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. I would also like to note right at the top that we are having difficulties with the raise hand button. So I do have the people who've signed up in advance. However, if you did not sign up in advance and would like to speak, feel free to email testimony@lpc.nyc.gov. With that, we will first be hearing from Andrea Goldwyn. Andrea Goldwyn, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Okay. Let me see. I'm sorry, I'm having difficulties promoting Andrea to panelist. Stephen, could you? If that doesn't work, we could just allow the talk. Okay, so I'm just going to click allow to talk. You just promoted her? I'm still speaking in the attendees list.
Yeah, she's there.
Okay.
Hi, just so you know, the screen came on with the option to promote. I tried it a few times and the first few times it didn't work, but this time it did. So thank you for that. Apologies. Let me just reset my screen. All right. Good afternoon, Chair Carroll and Commissioners. I'm Andrea Goldwyn, speaking on behalf of the New York Landmarks Conservancy. The Conservancy is pleased to support this proposal to restore and alter 854 Fifth Avenue. This 1905 Beaux-Arts style building, which Warren and Whatmar designed as a single-family residence, is one of the last of its kind along this part of Fifth Avenue. We are pleased to see this plan, which will ensure its reactivation and reuse after many years when it was vacant and under-maintained. The recent period of stasis has left this handsome building in need of a substantial rehabilitation. This proposal to restore the limestone and brick facades, mansard and flat roofs, windows, doors, and all ornamentation will be a welcome improvement. The project team has proposed a series of alterations that will improve the facility of the building while respecting its historic character. New and extended bulkheads will blend in at the roofline. Infill at the interior court will not be visible to the public. The new front door will better match the original than the existing door. Modifications to the areaway will reflect historic features of the building while making it more functional. We are all very interested to see the first application of the proposed lift system. Altogether, the restorative and new elements of this proposal will enhance the landmark and this grand Upper East Side block. Thank you for the opportunity to express the Conservancy's views.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from John Graham from the Victorian Society of New York. John Graham, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Well, that worked just fine. Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Graham for the Victorian Society in New York. 854 Fifth Avenue has had a turbulent recent history, suffering both water and fire damage and not receiving the care such an important building deserves. We are very pleased to see such an extensive plan to restore and rehabilitate one of the last remaining Gilded Age mansions on Fifth Avenue, especially when spearheaded by a firm that is as exacting as Peter Penoyer Architects. We generally support this proposal, but there are two aspects of the plan that we feel need further attention. The first is the new front door design, which is very attractive, but appears to be more ornate than the design visible in the 1910 photo, which we presume to be the original one. We would urge the new doorway to be as faithful as possible to the original design, given the care being taken for the other parts of the restoration. Additionally, the proposed alterations to the interior facade of the light well are too severe, as they involve the loss of historic windows that are not salvaged or repurposed in any way. It does not seem necessary for these windows to be sacrificed in the redesign, and as this project requires a zoning modification, we would urge the commissioners to be more strict than usual in requiring preservation and restoration. We feel the restricted declaration that goes with the 74711 zoning should state that the LPC retains jurisdiction over the formally exterior courtyard walls and the beautifully detailed windows that will become interior features. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we will be hearing from Nuha Ansari from the Friends of the Upper East Side. Nuha Ansari, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Chair Carroll, Honourable Commissioners, my name is Nuha Ansari and I'm speaking on behalf of Friends of the Upper East Side Historic District. Friends' Preservation Committee commends the applicants on undertaking to restore this distinctive and elegant Beaux-Arts townhouse, noted in the Historic District Designation Report as, quote, one of the finest extant small townhouses on Fifth Avenue, end quote. Our Preservation Committee appreciates the meticulously detailed and carefully considered plans for the restoration of the building and its historic materials, especially given the current highly deteriorated conditions of the exterior facades, including fire damage to the limestone masonry. Friends has no objections to the LPC issuing a report pursuant to 74711, since we believe that the proposed bulk modifications will have a minimal adverse effect on the open space, and the alterations are respectful of the historic design. We also do not object to the removal of the existing non-original doors at the entrance and their replacement with decorative iron doors and a transom. We believe this represents an improvement, as do the renovations to the areaway. Our Preservation Committee is intrigued by the ADA-compliant sesame lift that the applicants have proposed, but we look forward to seeing its operating systems in greater detail, and we ask the applicants to ensure that the installation is minimally disruptive to the form of the limestone entrance steps. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we will be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Okay. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC finds this application almost entirely appropriate, but the applicant's request for 74711 necessitates that a higher than usual standard be applied. In this case, we believe the special windows on the interior court should be maintained, or at least incorporated more directly into the new scheme. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your testimony. I have not received any further emails regarding somebody who would like to provide testimony. So I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 8 recommended approval, and I will bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Thank you, Gregory. So I'd like to turn back and ask if you'd like to respond to the comments.
Yes, thank you. I think the concern about the courtyard windows is understandable. And the rendering, they look interesting and they're very unusual. They are in fact sheet metal and they're attached to the stair behind, which is non-compliant for code. If we were to do anything with them, they would have to be entirely deassembled and rebuilt. But the real issue is that the opening that they create is only 2 feet, 6.5 inches wide. And that opening, if we were to incorporate it into the new scheme, would necessitate a new approach to egress, which we investigated and found there was absolutely no answer. So in terms of code, in terms of materiality, in terms of how they could work, they just simply don't work for the new design. I do point out that we are reusing balusters that are special from another stair, and that the door leading to this space will incorporate a replica of the pediment, which is the centerpiece of those windows. So that we will use. If this is a make or break moment on this issue, we could disassemble it, reassemble them, and then encapsulate them carefully inside the finished wall so that in a future renovation, our layer of construction can be removed and reveal this window. There are other complicating factors, one of which is that our new stair will be behind these windows, and with that will require a fire rating, which they simply don't have. We're really hard pressed to squeeze elements like our fire stairs into the building because our client happily is not allowing us to touch any of the main rooms. So we're squeezed between two glorious French rooms to put in our stair. And that's, I think that's the issue with those windows. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any other questions?
If you as to the front door, we think that a design is entirely appropriate, and we're not convinced that, you know, executing the detail that we proposed is inconsistent with the original. You know, and it's not entirely clear what the original was in the photographs we've been able to find.
All right. All right. Commissioners, any final questions?
Comment. Just want to let the architect know that what a beautiful set of drawing. It should be commended. That type of detailing is well done.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, so if there are no other questions, we will move to close the hearing. Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum, would you second that motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed, and this is a sort of remarkable building that remains between these apartment buildings on Fifth Avenue, which still has some remarkably intact interior spaces. And you know, this is an interesting project because it is seeking a special permit for a club use, which I think as that use requires some modifications to accommodate the new use, sort of an adaptive use. But that use also enables and provides the resources for a really great restoration. And so there are many components to this that are really wonderful. And I think as we think about the changes, in particular the special windows in the courtyard, I think, you know, we, you know, on the one hand, it is a special permit request where we do seek to get the highest quality restoration. But I think on the other hand, one can think about it in the context of all of the restoration that is happening here and sort of weigh it in that way, and also recognize that they are not visible from a public way, so not part of the public experience now, and think about the applicant's response that talks about the challenges with the new use and accommodating the new use here, and how that has technical and code requirements that make these retention of these special windows challenging. So I think we can think about it that sort of comprehensively, and you know, we have approved removing special windows on non-visible facades before. So I think it's really sort of in the context of the adaptive reuse as well as the restoration plan that's proposed, the entire restoration plan that's proposed for the special permit. So with that, we'll go ahead and start our discussion. And Commissioner Holford Smith, would you like to start this one? I know, don't forget her.
Sure. Well, I mean, this is an incredible project and congratulations. It's great to have this building be brought back to life after the horrible fire. And also to know that these interiors are going to be retained and restored. I mean, it's really a complete win-win application. I guess I'll start in the back with the new core, the stair that's being added in the back, and the copper cladding, which I think is appropriate. It's part of the language of the building that was used by Warner Wetmore when they first designed it. So I think that's a very appropriate way to cap off that part of the addition at the back. I think all the restorative work is fantastic, bringing back the original railings and maintaining the beautiful diagonal spandrels that are up on the back stair. I think all the work at the front is obviously, purely restorative and will bring the building back to the condition it was in prior to the fire. I really applaud the use of that sesame lift, which I think would be fantastic for other locations in New York City. And I'm assuming that it's been approved by the DOB for use. So that's really great. This invisible way to create accessibility into a building like this. I think the biggest issue for people is the courtyard infill. I was just concerned about the loss of those really beautiful windows when I saw this application before hearing the description of how they're constructed and what's behind them. So I think I'm a little torn. It seemed that they're sheet metal fabrication. It's a very difficult thing to take apart and put back together again. And I understand that some of the pediment sections are going to be reused. That's what I heard. It would be nice to be able to reuse part of the windows in some location of the building.
I'm moving the mic a little closer.
Oh, sorry. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just, feeling torn about the decorative windows on the east facade. And they're not going to be incorporated for the most part into the new design. But the fact that they're sheet metal fabrication will make it very difficult to take them apart, put them back together again. So I think that I'm persuaded by the applicant that the new uses being put to the building and making it code compliant can warrant the elimination of this historic fabric. But I hope that they can save as much of it as possible for potential use inside the building. And I think those are my comments for now. I look forward to hearing what other commissioners have to say.
Thank you. Vice Chair Bland?
Jumping around here.
Yep.
Well, I think the spirit of Warren Wetmore is in this room today. And I think he's very relieved and happy with Peter Ponier and the work that is that we're seeing here. I think this is an extraordinary it is an adaptive use, but not a huge loop in terms of a change of use, but it is a change of use. I think it's all so elegantly done. I don't need to go through all the parts of it. I think, like everybody else, we're certainly looking forward to see how the new stair works. I think, given its imagined cost, it may not be something we see every day, but it may represent a new way of dealing with this very troublesome problem that we have in so many buildings. Regarding the courtyard, I'm glad this is up. I think, again, in the spirit of, or in the context of an adaptive reuse, this is all fine. I mean, it's incredibly elegant, even set aside the difficulties that were expressed in terms of keeping some of it. So all in all, I think this is exemplary. And again, I just feel this little building, that last slide, I think it was the very last one, and maybe one of the first ones. This little building was this little guy that just was one of the big apples, amongst all of his fancy neighbors in the beginning, and now is wedged in with all of the bigger guys around him along the whole stretch of the famous Fifth Avenue wall. But this is the survivor, and it's going to survive a lot longer now because of the work that we're seeing.
Thank you, Commissioner Chen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think this is one case where you wish that really are visible, where the public get to see it. I have no problem with it. I think the addition at the back is very well done, and I have no problem with the courtyard being filled in.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
I agree. This is a really good project, and they're sparing no expense, and it would be lovely to see the building restored.
Right, Commissioner Goldblum.
I generally agree as well. I think that this, for me, raises a very interesting point. Here you have a highly elegantly designed building in a particular historic style, and an architect who is very well versed in that particular style and working in it. And we also have the situation of a 74-711, where a heightened level of attention is required by us to review the project and deem it appropriate. And you also have that in a situation where no significant bulk is being added, or no big monster mega tower is being put next door, all of which are very interesting situations. And so for me, the thing that's interesting about this, and I think I do support it as presented, but I think it presents an interesting question, and that is that there's a diametric difference between preservation policy in this case and the desire for a mellifluous design that is historically accurate, and that really comes into focus in the courtyard, where we have a case where Warren and Wetmore produced a design of a particular style and quality made up of particular architectural elements that this architect, for very good reasons, is tossing out the window for the most part. There are many reused parts and pieces, and I think that that's wonderful. But the change of the design and articulation of the room is significant and seamless, if it were, and which is in a way a compliment to their work, but a critique of it from the perspective of historic preservation, which would want to preserve and identify Warren Wetmore's contribution as distinct from Peter Pinoy Architect's contribution. I think that the rear yard copper addition is a perfect counterexample to that, where, Warren Wetmore were they hired to renovate this building by, the club owner in 2023, would have probably done something like that, where the addition is discernible from the original, but is sympathetic to it in style and in detail. The courtyard is very different. It really kind of erases that notion of layering and retention and really kind of just tosses it out and starts from a clean slate. And I think that that's a bit of an exaggeration, but you get my going for it. I think it would be a worthy challenge to a worthy architect to try to figure out ways to preserve the reading of Warren Wetmore's original while still achieving their goals for fire protection and code compliance today, whether that involves reusing materials or repurposing elements, or trying to keep the design of the space, even if it's out of new materials, consistent with, or revelatory of the Warren Wetmore original. I think that's a challenge that has been met in other places, but is not quite there in the courtyard. I don't think it's enough to withhold approval from me, but I think it would be a better job were that done better on the courtyard.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chapin.
Okay, so I'll say at the outset that I can accept this as presented. I think, first of all, it's a major restoration of a very important building, and it's done with great care, and I think, attention to detail, and is going to be a terrific restoration. So it's following the guidelines that we look to for long-term, committed care of a building. And so that's one thing to be very happy about, obviously. Moving on, the new accessibility stair is really terrific. It's exciting to have a new way to try to deal with this, and we can only hope that others will be able to avail themselves of this kind of technology, and they'll be able to do it, because if you can watch a video of it, we haven't been able to see it yet, but you can watch a video and it just looks terrific. So we're all looking forward to that, and to the hope that others will be able to use, and it'll be, if it isn't affordable now, for people, will become more affordable. So those are a couple of points, but to go to some specifics, I think that so modifying the stoop, I think, is appropriate, and it was done appropriately and sensitively. Also, the ironwork is reflecting the historic ironwork. On the courtyard, which Michael is troubled by, I feel that we have allowed adaptive reuse before for individual landmarks. And this is certainly not the first time. And I feel like this element of the individual landmark is one that's not visible from any public way, and really does not, to me, much define the character of the architecture. And I think that permitting it to evolve in this way, we do also let historic buildings evolve. And I think this is an appropriate evolution in this case. And I don't feel it needs to be called out with a different design particularly. And as far as the upper bulkheads and so forth, I think that they're not visible except from very limited aspects and from a great distance, so that it clearly is not an issue. So I think overall this is really, it's a terrific project, and it and the interior as well is going to be beautiful, as we saw at the tour that we took. So I think it's something I can very happily approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson.
Obviously, a very respectful and careful job. I think every line item, modify the stoop, modify the area where install ironwork, replace the door, all of these line items have been handled with real care, and the architects should be commended on that. The one issue, of course, is the courtyard. And this particular type of courtyard I've only seen in Mexico, where it's inside a building. And it's, removing space, exterior space, making it an interior space is a major change, I think. But I don't have a solution for it. I think it's unfortunate, because that's such a unique space.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Master.
Yeah, I echo everyone else's enthusiasm for this project. It's an incredible building, and I think we're so lucky that we have an applicant who wants to restore it the right way and is willing to invest in this building. So I'm very happy about all of the different aspects of it. I'm going to agree with Commissioner Chapin in terms of, I think the only thing that we're really questioning, which is the courtyard. And that, we're so lucky that they're restoring it, but it is an adaptive reuse. And in order for them to use it in the way that they want to, I think that it's appropriate for us to allow this courtyard to be renovated in this way.
Thank you. And, and I am mindful also of the requirements of the special permit and sorry, Jeannie, I'm sorry. You're just.
I didn't know you wrote something.
What's wrong with
Anyway, I think so much has been said here. It was really wonderful to be able to tour the building. I mean, it was astounding how much was there. It was astounding how knowledgeable Peter and the whole team were, and it was very clear that everything they were doing was like coming from having done a tremendous amount of research. And also, I think there was like a lot of love that just they were connecting to the building in a way that I think made me feel it, and some of the other commissioners, that, everything they were doing was full of a lot of thought. And the goal was, they weren't necessarily going to be slavish, but they were going to honor and respect the existing architecture, and that any changes made would work within the context and would ultimately add to what was there. So to that end, I would like to say that I think they've done an amazing job. And we spent a lot of time initially outside talking about what the changes were going to be to enable barrier-free access. And you can see just by looking at this particular slide that the expanding the width of the stoop and adding those metal railings in no way detract from the entryway or the facade of this building. And I feel that way about the work that they're doing on in terms of replacing the door and all other little points that they're doing on the front. I think in terms of the courtyard, I'm just not having a problem with it. I think it is an adaptive reuse in terms of what's going in there. And I think the changes that they're making are not going to take away from the building in any way. I also want to mention that, there are going to be changes on the inside as well. They can't keep everything exactly the way it was, but I was struck by how emphatic the applicant was, and Peter was, that they were going to retain as much original fabric as they possibly could. And I have to commend them for that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I think that's a good segue to the comment I was going to make about the 74-711 and, the higher standard that we hold applicants to. And I think that the amount of restoration work that is needed and that will be undertaken at this building is just immense. And it's, you can't actually understand the scope of it just from these drawings. Every inch of the brick needs work, every subsurface needs work, exterior surface needs work, and there are many, many special windows at the back that are being carefully restored. And so I think that in the larger scope, while the removal of those windows, which are not visible and will allow for the new use, I think also within the context of that large scope of restoration work, still the entire project serves a preservation purpose. And I'm comfortable with it from that perspective as well. So I think we have a consensus of support. Commissioner Holford Smith, would you be comfortable making the motions, or at least one? If you get tired and want someone else to do the second one, we can do that.
Sure, yes. Happy to. In the matter of LPC 24-02994 854 Fifth Avenue, R. Livingston and Eleanor T. Beekman House, formerly the permanent mission of Yugoslavia to the UN, an individual landmark. A French Beaux-Arts style house designed by Warren and Wetmore and built in 1903-1905. The application is to modify the stoop and install a barrier-free access lift, modify the areaway, install ironwork, replace the door, remove special windows, enclose a courtyard, and construct and modify bulkheads. I note that the building is an individual landmark, as well as a contributing building within the Upper East Side Historic District. I further note that the building suffered a fire in 2018, which caused substantial damage to stonework at the primary facade. I recommend approval, finding that the work will not eliminate significant architectural features at the stoop and will facilitate barrier-free access to the main entrance of the building in the least obtrusive way feasible. That the proposed barrier-free access lift, concealed beneath new stair treads and risers at the north side of the stoop, will be minimally perceptible when in the closed position. That the new limestone steps at the stoop will match the existing limestone at the base of the building in terms of materials, details, and finish. That the proposed areaway stairs are simple in design and will be typical of service stairs commonly found at below-grade areaways at buildings of this type and age. That the proposed planter at the areaway will match the details of the existing historic planter and will help further obscure the utilitarian features of the areaway. That the modified opening at the below-grade side of the stoop with a simple door with a neutral finish will not call undue attention to itself. That the proposed gate at the areaway entrance and railings at the stoop will match existing historic metalwork found at the dormers and will be in keeping with the placement and details of gates and railings that commonly existed historically at buildings of this type, style, and age. That metal railings have commonly been added to stoops over time to provide fall protection. And that the replacement of the existing main entrance door will remove an unsympathetic later alteration, and the proposed paired glass and metal door are in keeping with doors found at buildings of this type, style, and age, with details based on other historic metalwork at the building. That only a limited amount of simple paneled historic copper will be removed to accommodate new doors at the existing Oriel window, and the multi-light doors harmonize with the configuration of adjacent 6/6 double-hung windows. That the rear yard addition will be installed at a deep below-grade rear yard and will not eliminate any significant historic features or be visible from public thoroughfares. That the special windows to be removed are located at a courtyard that is not visible from public thoroughfares, and other special windows that are visible from public thoroughfares will be retained and restored. Therefore, the work will not diminish the overall design composition and views from the street. That the two-story enclosure of the interior courtyard and installation of the skylight will not be visible from public thoroughfares. That the proposed rooftop bulkheads will not be visible from directly across the street on Fifth Avenue and will only be seen from a great distance within Central Park in the context of other utilitarian rooftop accretions at neighboring buildings. And that the proposed bulkhead extension that will be visible from a limited vantage point on East 66th Street will feature copper materials and details and will be in keeping with the design nature of this secondary facade.
Right, thank you. And Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
So,
Right, John, will you call the vote?
Chair Powell,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland, Commissioner Chapin, Commissioner Chen, Commissioner Ginsburg, Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Jefferson, Nay. Commissioner Lutfi, Commissioner Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
9 in favor, 1 opposed, the motion passes.
All right, great. And I'm going to have Commissioner Chen do the next motion to give you a break.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks.
In the matter of LPC 24-02995, 854 Fifth Avenue. The R. Livingston and Eleanor Beekman House, formerly Permission of Yugoslavia to the UN, and individual landmark. The application is to request that the Landmarks Preservation Commission issue a report to the City Planning Commission relating to an application for modification of use and bulk pursuant to section 774-711 of the zoning resolution. Noting the building is an individual landmark as well as a contributing building within the Upper East Side Historic District. Further noting that the building suffered a fire in 2018, which caused substantial damage to stonework at the primary facade. I recommend approval, finding that the restorative work approved pursuant to application LPC 24-02994, including repair and replacement of limestone, brickwork, decorative metalwork, and windows and doors, will help return the building closer to its historic appearance. That the restorative work will reinforce the architectural and historic character of the building and the historic district, and that the restorative work will bring the building up to a sound, first class condition and aid in its long-term preservation. That the bulk waivers being sought will relate harmoniously to this individual landmark and the historic district. That the implementation of a cyclical maintenance plan will ensure the continuing maintenance of the building in a sound first-class condition. And that the owners of the designated building have committed themselves to establishing a perpetual cyclical maintenance plan that will be legally enforceable by the Landmarks Preservation Commission under the provision of a restricted declaration, which will bind all its successors, assigns, and subsequent owners of the building, and which will be recorded at the New York County Register's Office.
Thank you. And Vice Chair Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
John, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland. Commissioner Chapin. Commissioner Chen. Commissioner Ginsburg. Commissioner Goldblum. Commissioner Jefferson. Commissioner Lutfi. Commissioner Master.
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
10-0, the motion passes.
So that's approved. Thank you. And we look forward to seeing the work happen. We'll move to the next and final item.
The last item for today is public hearing item number 8. LPC 24-03923, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1520, lot 3, 1149 Park Avenue in the expanded Carnegie Hill Historic District. This is a row house built in 1884 to 85 and altered in the modern classical style by Emery Roth in 1917. The application is to construct rooftop and rear yard additions.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Erin Worley, Higgins, Quaysbarth and Partners. We're the preservation consultants for this project. I'm joined today by Gary Brewer of Robert A. Stern Architects, who are the project architects. I'm going to take you through some of the history and context, and then Gary will share with you the specifics of the designs. So here we have 1149 Park. It is a 4-story townhouse located on the east side of Park Avenue between 91st and 92nd Streets in the Carnegie Hill Expanded Historic District. This was a 1917 expansion and refacing of an earlier row house building. In 1917, the design is attributed to Emery Roth. Limestone clad central bay, multi-light windows, and central entry at the base. Just to give you an overview of the scope of work, here at the primary facade, it's window and door replacement, facade restoration. Much of that will be managed at staff level. Up at the rooftop, there is an existing penthouse that we're proposing to expand, which we can see here. The penthouse is, the design is modeled on a historic reference of recessed attic stories that we see in buildings of this type and period. And we'll be looking at those as we go into the presentation. But picking up on the design and expression of the primary facade, and it's clad in limestone. Above that, we have some mechanical equipment. And then at the rear, we're proposing to reconfigure some of the massing. There's an existing 4-story L currently, and the lower 2 floors fully occupy the lot. There's no rear yard at this property. And so we're removing the L, extending the plane of the rear facade forward about 5 feet, and then reconfiguring these lower floors. And much of this is solving for code required light and air, which doesn't exist in the current condition. And it also has the added benefit of providing some open space onto the donut, which is really impacted by that 4-story extension as we go through this. And so some of our thinking in terms of the appropriateness is rooted in 2 basic ideas. One, that there has been a significant history of change at this building and the buildings that originally comprised its row. And it's a somewhat unique block condition, and that with that context of change, drawing on that model of recessed attic stories and executing a design that we think is really well crafted and recalls the facade condition might be appropriate in this instance. So just jumping into the existing conditions, here's an aerial view. 1149 is this northernmost row house that abuts the 12-story co-op to the north. And so you can see it's the 5th building in adjacent to the adjacent co-op. And then at the rooftop, you'll see there's a small penthouse addition. This was approved in 2006. It's basically a little stucco clad box with a stair bulkhead that projects a little closer to Park Avenue. Moving around to the back, this is that 4-story extension that I mentioned. What you can't see here, where it's a little hard to see, is that the lower 2 floors where you're fully developed in the lot, and extending up, and then the penthouse at the rooftop. The central view is showing you just the general facade condition. It's common brick. There's no significant architectural detail there, no corbelling at the cornice line or anything. And some of the sills and lintels have been replaced. It's coated throughout. The third view, looking sort of toward the donut, here you can see the footprint of the 2-story extension at the base of the building, and then also gives you a sense of how removal of this L will sort of open up onto the donut. The original row, here we see the existing building in the context of the row. It was originally one in a row of 4 constructed in 1885. So it was these 4 row houses here, designed and constructed by John Sullivan. The corner building was also constructed by John Sullivan, but that was a separate development. You can see it's a larger footprint, more substantial building. These are very small buildings. As you can see in the map, they're about 16 to 16.5 feet wide, and the lots only extend 70 feet into the block. So in 1917, the 1880s row house was converted by Emery Roth, one of, we think, few designs, row house designs by him. And the original advertisement on the left, it was a speculative development. But this is really that generation of buildings that's in the first few decades of the 20th century, when you go from row houses to individual townhouses, how they are altered and expanded or even replaced at that time. But it goes from something that's a really unified composition across the block to something that has a very individual style by the house. And so by 1929, we see that condition already in the variation between the 4 original buildings in that row, each one sort of evolving on its own. In plan, we start to see those changes here. Beginning in the late 19th century, no rear yard extensions. The first decade of the 20th century, we start to see rear extensions developing at the south end of the block, and then more impressive by 1939, the construction of 1155 Park Avenue, of course, the co-op to the north, and then full height extensions at 1149, 1145, and rear yard extension at 1143. That sort of brings us to the existing condition. This is just to give you an overview of the whole block, some context of existing extensions and rooftops, but really what's of interest to us is this corner. And this is what it looks like in plan today. The three buildings within this row have two-story extensions that fully occupy their lots. They have four-story extensions projecting out onto, in addition to the 2 stories, and then all of them have, everyone except 1143 has rooftop additions. Specific to our building, we have at least 3 generations of extension back there. So we have the 1917 4-story L. In the 1940s, the lower 2 floors were extended for physicians' offices. And those, I mean, that was sort of the typical evolution of Park Avenue, where commercial and doctors' offices were added at the lower floors of the buildings, and they extended out to the lot line. And then that 2006 addition at the rooftop. And so this is the existing condition today at the rear. 1149 is the farthest to the right, abutting the co-op, and you can see the 4-story L and the 2-story extension at the base of the building. Our adjacent neighbor, which was originally part of the row, has their rear facade has been reconstructed. It's in a sort of stucco ashlar pattern, and it's a little bit proud. The plane of that is a little bit proud of where our rear wall would have been, and the cornice line is different than the simple brick corbelling that we would expect to see at the top of the building, and the penthouse is virtually coplanar with the lower portion of the wall. Similarly, at the building to the south of that, 1145 is that had a fourth-story penthouse at 5th-story penthouse, and that is coplanar with the rear facade. So it's rising up the sheer 5 stories at the rear, and that has a reconstructed cornice. But I think what we see here is that there's really no visual continuity between the buildings, and that also the sort of great benefit of reducing that 4-story wing at the rear of the building. In thinking about how a visible addition might be appropriate in this context, we looked to other buildings of this type. And so here we're looking at buildings in those first two decades of the 20th century, trying to understand how they worked compositionally. And these all have setback attic stories as part of their original expression. So it was a terminating feature meant to be seen in conjunction with the primary facade, and sharing having a shared vocabulary and materiality that we see in each of these examples. And so this is really informing our approach to how the design and scale and massing of the addition has been executed. And then finally, similarly at the rear, we see that same sort of expansion occurring at the rears of these buildings. For the altered row houses, they oftentimes got 1 or 2 stories added at the top of the building through a mansard or an attic story, and then that would extend all the way back to a full height rear yard extension. So we can see in the sort of before and after in the map data, how that evolves and how the expanded row houses came to be formed at the rears of these buildings. And so I think with that context in mind, I'll pass the presentation to Gary to share with you the details.
Hi, I'm Gary Brewer from Robert Stern Architects, and thank you, Aaron, for the introduction. It's interesting to note that not only was the townhouse done by Emery Roth, but it was done for Bing and Bing, the apartment building developers. So it's kind of an interesting combination. And through the advertisement that we found, it's also interesting to know that it was done as a spec design. So the exterior facade, the historic facade, we are restoring it, and we are proposing to replace the windows with double glazed windows with muntins that are sympathetic to the design of the building. Here you can see, and it's kind of hard to see from this angle, but here you can see the photo on the right is the original windows in the black and white. The photo in the middle is what the current windows are. And the difference is that on the second floor and third floor, the casement windows that were originally there were replaced with picture windows. And so in the spirit of restoration, we are proposing to go back to what was the original design associated with it. The windows and doors at the ground level will also be replaced, and the existing limestone is to be cleaned. It was difficult finding better photos of what the historic doors look like. And so what we are proposing is to replace at the center of the door, or at the center door, a new 6-panel door with decorative side lights, which was also in the advertisement, although it was very fuzzy. On the right-hand door, we're proposing to replace that with a 4-panel door, but without the glass at the top 2 panels. And then the window to the left, the casement window, will be replaced to match the historic design. We're also proposing to relocate the light fixtures to the sides of the doors instead of above the doors beyond. This is the existing condition. So you can see that, as Lindsay pointed out, there is an L on the back that sits that's set back by 9'4", and then the penthouse currently sets back from the Park Avenue facade by about 28'4". Here you can see the existing conditions with the 5 townhouses and the apartment building to the north. And what is being proposed is a slightly larger penthouse that moves forward towards Park Avenue, and then demolition of the L on the back, which I'll talk about later. So here is the proposed design, as Lindsay pointed out. Aaron pointed out with the precedents. The idea is to make it limestone so that it matches the existing building, to gang new windows and doors that are similar to what is happening on the floors below, and then to have a parapet that helps to screen the mechanical enclosure beyond, but treated in a very simple way, in the way that the modern classical facade by Emery Roth is treated. So here you can see on the left is the current. So the face of the current penthouse sets back by 28'4", although its stair sits back by 19 feet. And what is being proposed in this design is to do a slightly larger penthouse and have its facade set back from the Park Avenue facade by 15 feet. And the mechanical enclosure that I'll describe further sits back 5 feet from the new facade. So on the right-hand side is the proposed design, and the apartment building and the 2 windows that look out onto this roof are in the plan on the right, on the left-hand side. The height of the new penthouse is roughly the same height as the existing penthouse. We are required to have the FDNY 6-foot clear path, and we have located it close to the neighbors' windows so that we can locate all of the mechanical equipment to the south. Since the earlier design and hearing the neighbors' comments, we have worked with the mechanical engineer to lower the height of the mechanical units. We have also worked to lower the height of the elevator run, and we are also proposing that there be a mechanical fence and enclosure to not only hide the mechanical from the street and the garden facade, but also to hide it from the neighbors' windows that are on the lot line. So here you can see on the left, the existing design, and on the right is the proposed design. And the 7'3" represents the height of the parapet wall, which we've made slightly taller so that the mechanical enclosure beyond at 2'2" will be less visible. And then to the right, the 3'0" dimension represents the elevator overrun. So on the left is the axonometric of the current design in comparison to the proposed design facing Park Avenue, showing that the facade pulls forward by about 15 feet. So mock-ups were done. And so on the left is the mock-up in orange, and in the middle is the mock-up in the computer rendering to give a better sense of what it might look like if it weren't orange. And then on the right-hand side is one of the precedents showing how an upper level sits back, but still has the same materials and similarity to the building below. Here is the obligatory pedestrian view. So you can see how much you would see if you were on the east side, the east side of Park Avenue. And then just moving around, this is south looking north. So you can see the orange on the left and the rendering on the right. And then slightly farther away, proposed or mock-up on the left, proposed on the right. So you really, from a pedestrian view, you just see a bit of it peeking up above the existing building. This is another view. So orange on the left and the computer model on the right, and the detail zoomed in on the bottom right. And then south looking north, the two different views, and then the close-up on the bottom right showing how much you see. And then finally, north looking south. Much of it is obscured by the tall apartment building. So moving to the rear facade, on the left is an axon that shows the existing conditions. So the ground level and the second level are right on the lot line. The L sits back by 9'4", and then the main facade sits back, the top level sits back by 28'5". And so what we're proposing is to keep the main level on the lot line and to add windows in that location. But to get the light and air requirements, we will be adding a skylight on the roof, which is the reason why the second floor is being pushed back by 4 feet. And then the L is demolished, and the facade of the third and fourth floor pulls forward to the 20-foot legal light and air. So we are pushing that forward slightly. And then the top level, we're setting it back so that it recedes and does not appear to be part of the composition. And then you can see the mechanical on the roof and how it is pushed to the south away from the neighbor, and how it is screened with a fence around it to obscure its view from the neighbor. The general feeling, at least on the team's part, is that the demolition of the L and the new brick facade is for the public good of all the immediate adjacent neighbors and will help to open up views beyond providing a nicer facade, we'd like to think. So we've included views of the before on the left and the proposed on the right. And so you can see how the building sets back at its various levels. And then an elevation of the existing on the left and the proposed on the right. The materials that we're proposing are red brick that would be typical of a backside of the townhouse facade like this, so it doesn't appear to be as important. We have ganged the windows in reference to the window syncopation facing the street. And then at the upper level, we are proposing to clad that in zinc or zinc-like metal material so that it, from our mind, somehow has a different character of the new building below. And all of the details, there's a slight little bit of detail at the eave, but it's all sort of done in a simplified manner to signify that it's an exterior, the backside of the building. So here is the view from the neighbors. So you can see on the left how the L projects out, especially blocking the view to the neighbor to the south, and the proposed design on the right with the L removed and the new red brick facade and the penthouse done in a gray metal. And here you can see it in a slightly closer view. And then in closing, this is the proposed Park Avenue facade and the garden facade. And it's quite interesting, we think, to be able to have the opportunity to work on an Emery Roth building to help restore it with our client, who is a longtime resident of Carnegie Hill. So with that, well, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, did we have any questions, commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Jefferson.
Page 31. If you could go to page 31. Slide 31. The existing penthouse, was it visible in that context before?
It was, you can see the eve line of it. It's minimally visible in that context. Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, let me see if we have any public testimony. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak on this item? Yes, please come up and come to the podium and state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. Excuse me. Good afternoon. My name is Bob Ducommon. I'm a resident of 1155 Park Avenue, where I have served as the board president for the last 20 years. We have been here before. In 2005 and 2006, we joined in the opposition to the rooftop additions proposed by the owners of both 1149 and 1147, Park Avenue. The proposal that you are considering this afternoon is as aggressive in its attempt to add space to the 1149 rooftop as was the proposal considered, and I believe rejected by your predecessors in 2005. As depicted by the mock-up that is currently in place, the proposed penthouse addition is clearly visible from the southwest corner of Park Avenue and 91st Street, in turn disrupting the visual symmetry established by the row of low buildings on the east side of Park Avenue and Brick Church on the west side. That symmetry was established by John Sullivan's 1880 design, representing a time capsule of the architectural heritage of the Carnegie Hill Historic District. When before you in 2015, Alex Garvin, extraordinarily accomplished in his contributions to the cityscape of New York, submitted testimony that certified the architectural significance of this row of townhouses, highlighting the rarity of their flat, contiguous, and essentially shared roofs, the way of life that they represent, and the importance of the sightline that they establish. He also testified to the fact that these buildings had not then been significantly altered since they were built by John Sullivan in the late 19th century, unlike many of their Park Avenue peers that for the most part have been replaced by high-rise apartment buildings. These important museum qualities and the purity of the historic record will be seriously compromised if this, in what we believe on good authority, will be proposals soon made by the owners of the houses located in 1145 and 1147 Park Avenue are approved. In its height, the proposed penthouse design violates the symmetry established by John Sullivan's creation, then meant to affect the look and feel of an entire neighborhood, and in turn contribute to a greater good in its spatial representation of community. The proposed design does not, and instead encourages additional departures that we are assured will soon be proposed by next door neighbors. Collectively, and with their separateness, they will amplify their insulation from any sense of obligation to community citizenship and become another example of what generally is our lengthening detachment from our collective heritage. We therefore hope that in your decision, you will honor what in this case should be the obligation to respect the sanctity of Sullivan's original intent and design and the precedent that we believe was established by the commission's decisions in 2005 and 2006. With that, we respectfully request assurance that any departure from the precedent be clearly stated and understood and justified by its contributions to the greater good of the community. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this item? All right. Noting that there isn't, I will turn it over to Gregory to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. If you would like to speak on this item, please click the raise hand button now. First, we'll be hearing from Friends of the Upper East Side. Friends of the Upper East Side, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. So please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Chair Carroll, honourable commissioners, my name is Nuha Ansari and I'm speaking on behalf of Friends of the Upper East Side Historic Districts. Friends' Preservation Committee has no objection to the rear yard addition at 1149 Park Avenue, and we believe that the new building will introduce a more traditional design at the rear yard in terms of the new massing as well as the red brick cladding. We appreciate the proposal for the restoration of the front facade and the consideration of the historic design in the replacement of the entrance and service doors and the new wood window. Friends' Preservation Committee has no objection to the modifications to the penthouse proposed, which would retain enough of a setback from the front and rear of the building. We are, however, concerned that the elevator overrun and mechanical equipment on the roof of the penthouse are too visible from the public way, even as we appreciate the efforts to screen the rooftop equipment with metal mesh. We also urge the applicants to minimize any adverse impact on the neighboring building at 1155 Park Avenue and to take into consideration their request to lower the mechanicals and elevator override feet to minimize the impact on the 4th floor apartment there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we will be hearing from Lo Vandervalk from Carnegie Hill Neighbors. Lo Vandervalk, I am promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Lo Vandervalk, representing Carnegie Hill Neighbors. We agree with Community Board 8 on the rear and front facades. However, our concern is with the expanded penthouse, which will move closer to the front to Park Avenue within 15 feet and will be visible from Park directly in front and to the side streets. The existing penthouse dating from 206 is set back about 19 feet from the street wall, and its roof slopes down going to the front of the building. So that was something that was mentioned earlier by the president of the board of 1155. Also, the mechanicals, the compressor and the elevator override are troublesome. They are all on the penthouse roof, in effect adding to half a floor to the penthouse roof. The combination will be very visible from Park and 92nd and 91st Streets. We contrast this with the new rooftop penthouse added to 1209 Park Avenue between 94th and 95th Streets. It too is one of a group of 5 townhouses. The LPC approved 1209 last August, just a few months ago. That penthouse was set back some 40 feet from Park and not at all visible from Park. Contrast that to the 15 feet for 1149. There are no AC units on the penthouse roof. Rather, they are placed on the existing roof of the penthouse front terrace for 1209. There is no elevator extending to the penthouse. Rather, it is existing for the first 4 floors only. No addition to the penthouse. Its neighbor at 1211 is similar with well set back penthouse by about 20 feet, no elevator, no visible AC units on the penthouse roof. So that sets an example of how the penthouse alterations can be approached. We have that in contrast to what we see here with the 15-foot setback and visibility of the elevator override and AC units. So we hope the commission can consider some modifications and make alterations that are more appropriate with less adverse impacts on the neighbors and the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any further hands raised in the meeting. So I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 8 recommends approval of both facades as well as the penthouse. And also we received one letter recommending denial from an individual. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
All right, thank you, Gregory. I'd like to ask if you'd like to respond to the comments.
So I think first, just a bit about the 2006 approval. The proposal that came forward to the commission in 2006 is essentially what was built. It was not as extensive as what we're showing today. There may have been something in discussions with the neighbors that got scaled back before the commission reviewed it. But what the commission reviewed was the thing that got built. It is maybe set back, I think, two feet more, and the window is different, but the scale of it was the same. It was presented as a minimally visible rooftop addition. The commissioners, because of its design, were not comfortable with really any visibility at that time because it's a stucco box, and then they pushed it back a bit more as a result of that. So that's the context for the 2006. So that is the commission has never opined on something like this on this building. In terms of the symmetry of the row, there has been, I mean, we can just go back to the existing conditions photo really quickly, but the 1885 row houses are not there. What we see is great variation. I mean, it's a beautifully varied streetscape here. We have different generations of alterations, and it's a real sort of collage of what was happening between the late 19th and early 20th century. So this idea that it's this pristine composition of late 19th century row houses is not exactly accurate. So, I mean, this is what we're, oh, sorry, going the wrong direction. Still going the wrong direction. There you go. So this is, and the only exception now is that this photo was taken before the red building was painted. So now they are all sort of limestone in color. So they have been much altered since their 19th century state at the front, the top, and the back. In terms of the elevator and the mechanical, I think, you know, in order to protect the lot line windows of the adjacent neighbor, we aligned the FDNY clear space along the lot line so that we weren't constructing elements against their lot line. Sorry, here we go. So we weren't constructing the elevator overrun on that lot line. Arguably, there's some risk involved in that because we pushed it into a more visible location in order to be neighborly and not block their windows. So I think there's some aspect of this where we were trying to mediate between not shoving everything against the building and what might be visible and from where. And I think just to sort of summarize in terms of the visibility, what we're seeing and from where, from across the street, we're catching the parapet of the rooftop, the penthouse, the expanded penthouse. Again, it's intentionally designed to be visible in that the spirit of the recessed attic stories. Here, the mechanical visibility is back in this corner above the cornice of the adjacent building, and that's all we're seeing. And in addition to like a little hint of the mechanical screen, which is set back 6 feet from the parapet. And then here they start to sort of disengage. So you have the limestone in the foreground and the mechanical equipment, the enclosure and the elevator overrun in the distance. It was intentionally designed so that the limestone parapet was a bit taller to minimize how you sort of read the mechanical enclosure and the penthouse so that it would recede in space. And also, I mean, there's a chimney at the front of the building. Once we mocked it up, we realized the extension was going to be highly visible and it's just sort of created a cluttered effect. But this led to us, we rerouted the chimney to the roof of the penthouse. And then the mechanical enclosure is really the shared railing. So rather than having a railing, a mechanical enclosure, and all of these visible mechanical units, we encapsulated everything within that mechanical enclosure to simplify it, make a more architectural gesture. And then here, just again, this is where you see, this is the view from 91st Street. This is sort of your longest view, and all the mechanical is viewed back behind the adjacent building. And similarly, that's what happens as you start to go south on Park Avenue. You sort of lose which building this is attached to. So I think with that.
All right. Thank you very much. Yes, Commissioner Ginsburg.
I just want to clarify something, because in a number of comments, they talked about elevator bulkhead and mechanical equipment. And somewhere, did you lower the bulkhead at some point during the process after community design and move equipment to it?
We moved equipment. So let me go back to the rooftop. Originally, it was an elevator overrun and one large mechanical unit that was about 10 or 12 feet tall at the rear. And so instead, we've broken it down into 5 smaller units that you can see sort of surrounding the elevator overrun. So the elevator overrun, this is it right here. And the mechanical equipment was here. And this all changed after the community board. And then we also added the enclosure along this side. So it sort of blocks what you're seeing and from that unit, from the 2 lot line windows.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other final questions? All right, let's move to close the hearing. Commissioner Master, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussions for a rooftop addition on this end house in this row of buildings that was altered in the early 20th century. And when we evaluate rooftop additions, we do look at visibility, but when they're visible, we also look at the design in the context of the building on which it sits and the surrounding roofscape. And so in this case, we have an addition that is designed to read as a setback attic floor, which is typical of many early 20th century townhouses, also seen against the backdrop of a taller apartment building. And I thank the applicant for clarifying the visibility. So when you're on Park Avenue, you're really not seeing the elevator bulkhead and mechanical equipment. It's only when you move further away. So we can have a discussion about all of those components. Vice Chair Bland, would you like to start this one?
I think it's always difficult when you're going up against the neighbor's outline walls or outline windows. But in this case, I don't think that's a principal issue. Listening to what they've tried to do, consistent with what they want to do in terms of the design, it seems like they've made the best of what they can do. I think altogether this is a very elegant solution. Not that we shouldn't expect such here. The back, of course, existing is not elegant at all, but it's becoming quite a beautiful facade, even though it will be seen by nobody in the public domain. The subtle changes in the front, I think, are acceptable, and the visibility of the corner such as it is acceptable to me. It's visible at places, but they made the point that only townhouses have visible either additions or right from the beginning setback parts of their original houses that were visible. And I think they've taken the point here of making the visibility, what you see, a very elegant and designed facade as opposed to a penthouse that's set back and made into gray stucco or something like that. I'm okay with it.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen,
Likewise here.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
I agree with Commissioner Bryan. I think we're in an interesting situation, although probably legally we don't have to respect the neighbor's window. And by trying to respect it, it made things more visible. I think from a comments and feedback and trying to be neighborly, I think that's good. And so I think this is approvable and appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum.
I agree. I think that normally my biggest concern here would be the fact that they're adding to all 4 levels at the back and thus eliminating any original reading of the volume of the historic building. But I think that in this particular context, because it's in the midst of so many heavily modified buildings and because there's not a real kind of sense of continuity or collectivity in this interior court, and because it's right up against this big building, and it itself, even the upper level has been added to before, I think that forms the basis for an acceptable exception to that rule. The other thing that two points, although I think it's appropriate as is, it would have been easy to get rid of the, to reduce the height by just putting the air conditioners like their neighbor did at 1147 on the front terrace, and getting rid of the elevator, to the top floor, which could have been subsumed within the rooftop addition. But I don't think the visibility is inappropriate, especially on this block where 1143 is already kind of creating a skyscape that is marred with stuff. And I also just wanted to note that I thought it was curious that they went with double hung windows for the back, where they're trying to clearly echo the front with the grid, but they're losing the casement windows, which I think were a very distinctive feature of the Emery Roth front facade as it was renovated, and kind of taking it back to a more neo-colonial or whatever kind of facade. I thought it was curious. I don't think it's inappropriate. I just thought it was a missed opportunity.
All right, Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, I agree in general with the comments of other people about the appropriateness of the addition both at the back end. And I think they pulled it, actually set it back in various ways. And I think and respectful of their neighbors generally, and also they really organized and regularized it there, so it looks very attractive now compared to the sort of hodgepodge
pieces, thank you, that are going on. So, I can approve it as presented. I think it's fine.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson.
A carefully designed project, well done. Hardly visible, but acceptable, appropriate.
Commissioner Master.
I agree. I think the rooftop addition, even though it's partially visible, I think it's acceptable given the context of the other rooftops. In terms of the rear addition, I like the fact that they took out that L because it really does expose light to their neighbors, and it was it actually makes the rear, not that we are supposed to judge, it makes the rear much nicer.
Commissioner Lutfi.
I think it's I agree with everything that's been said. I am particularly, I always think it's unfortunate that it's a little more visible than it needs to be, but I do truly appreciate the fact that they are helping that neighbor have their lot line window, which is important. And I think against the backdrop of the side building, it's okay.
All right, great. So I think we are in agreement. Vice Chair Bland, would you read the motion?
Right. 1140 Park Avenue, we expanded the Carnegie Hill Historic District. This is a row house built in 1884, 1885, and altered in classical style by Emily Roth in 1917. The application is to construct rooftop and rear yard additions. I note that the building style, scale, materials, details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the expanded Carnegie Hill Historic District. I recommend approval, noting that the removal of the existing rooftop addition and construction of a new addition will not alter or eliminate any significant architectural features. That the visible rooftop additions were sometimes introduced when row houses were designed in classicizing styles in the early 20th century. Therefore, the presence of a visible rooftop addition will be in keeping with this pattern of development over time. That the simple massing and use of limestone cladding at street-facing portions of the rooftop addition will be consistent with additions historically found at buildings of this type, style, and age, and the use of metal cladding at the rear facade will help differentiate the addition from the rear of the building, helping to maintain the residential scale. That the mechanical screen and bulkhead will be simply designed, neutral and finish, and will not call undue attention to themselves. That the rooftop addition will be seen from Park Avenue in the context of taller background buildings and other rooftop accretions. That the work at the roof will not be visible from any public thoroughfares. That the building is at the end of a road, separated from the road by an existing full height and adjacent to taller apartment buildings. Therefore, the demolition of the facade and rear yard additions and constructing the full height rear yard addition will not detract from the road. That the existing rear yard additions extending to the rear yard therefore, the proposed addition will not further diminish the central green space of the block. That the design and materiality of the rear yard addition, featuring brick cladding, multi-light windows and doors, and windows will be in keeping with the residential scale and character of other buildings in the block, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building or the expanded Carnegie Hill Historic District.
Thank you. And Commissioner Master, would you second that motion?
Second.
Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
All right, so that's approved. Thank you. And that concludes our public hearing and public meeting for today, December 12th, 2023. We have a public hearing next Tuesday, December 19th. And I want to thank you all for your hard work and long hours that you've put in here. So thank you very much.